Well, hello, YouTube. This is Cheezy Sales Cinema and our live YouTube spectacular, Drive 1980s style. And my name is Jason Reid, and I'm here as always with my co-host, Chris May. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great. I love the warm up to this. I love the concept of the 80s cars. I mean, this is right in our sweet spot, man.
Yeah, so, let's talk about what people are going to see today. One of the reasons why we chose the 80s is number one, because that's when Chris and I sort of started getting our first cars and started getting
Yeah.
interested in cars. But it's also really the sweet spot for the most insane car dealership ads, some of which we're going to share with you today.
These are off the wall. Like these are some of them are off the some of them are bad. And you wonder why in the world when you saw this and you said, okay, this is going to be my marketing, why would you let that air? So keep that in mind as well.
Indeed. And, we're looking at working class cars today. And, the Southern accent's already setting in, and you'll see why, because most of the car dealership ads, they have those accents. But, we're going to be concentrating on, just those basic entry level cars of the 80s, the Cavaliers, the Omnis, the K cars, all of that stuff. And the other thing we want are your memories as well. And what I want to do is hopefully, here we go. One of our viewers, Robert Ryan, one of my
Hey,
friends.
Robert. Thanks for joining us again, buddy. That's awesome.
Yeah. And this is what we want to do. We want to get you guys to interact with us. We have a whole bunch of questions for you. And let's just start, well, actually, with a couple ones. We want you to think about what cars you rode back in the 1980s. Maybe they were, a car that you had. Maybe it was a car that your dad had. There were a lot of cars out there, and some of them, a lot of the ones we're going to talk about are kind of boxy. Like by today's standards, they're not all that aerodynamic, but they certainly were fun.
Yeah, when they were designing cars back then, they were designing cars for roomy interiors. They had absolutely, and because gas was so cheap, they had no concern whatsoever about wind, the wind blowing up again, the wind resistance, and nothing. They didn't care at all about drag. So they basically put these very modular looking boxes on wheels that felt great when you're inside the car, but oh my gosh, they got terrible mileage.
Yeah, you'll notice that when we get to the dealership ads, they're actually hard on the eyes seeing so many of those boxy cars together.
There are some colors and some styles in automobile that I am so glad never, ever, ever came back.
Yeah, the bright yellow and the brown that we'll see later is really
Yeah,
something quite craptacular.
by the way, folks, not bright yellow and brown, bright yellow and brown together in the same damn car.
Yes.
It's ugly.
It exactly the same car. And Chris, I want to ask a question of you.
Sure.
And I'm going to answer this as well. What's your earliest car memory? Because obviously with cars, we have such a connection to them. And even, as kids, the car is this very special thing, this time that we have with our parents and the things that we go and do. What about you? What was your earliest memory for the car?
Are you asking me about cars that I would ride in or cars that I drove myself?
These could be cars that you rode into with your parents, just things that
I've got good ones.
Something you remember.
First of all, the cars back in the late 70s and throughout all the 80s, they had that huge, because that's where the axle would go through the center of the car, right? The powertrain. So there would be those big divots that would in the back seat that would be cut out where you would put your feet, and then there'd be that hump in the middle.
Yeah.
So obviously, my first memory was being so little that we had a station wagon. My sister, because she was the only girl in the family and the baby in the family, she got the whole back of the station wagon like it was a freaking suite. My brother and I had to curl up head to head in the tiny little wheel wells. You notice I didn't say anything about seat belts because seat belts were non-essential back then. We used to lie in the wheel wells. That's how we would sleep.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Rob says the oldest car that he can remember is his dad's purple Duster in the 70s. That's pretty awesome.
That's cool. The Duster was a cool car. My mom had a Pontiac Parisienne. I think it was a 74 or 75, but it still had the wings on the sides of it. And it was like mint green. Horrible.
And Rob also says, do you remember when station wagons used to have the faux wood paneling? Yes.
Had one of those. My mom had a Chrysler Town and Country with the Griswold wood paneling on the side. And another car memory. I got my license in '87. And one of the very first tours of duty I did was to go over to my buddy's house to see if he was home so I could show him that I got my license. Because back then, you get your license, you drive to Barrie. Who cares? I'm gone.
Exactly.
Drive across the border if you're of age. And, I wiped that car out so bad. I went through an intersection and somebody friggin' T-boned me. Just destroyed that car. Just destroyed it.
Yeah, my dad, actually, we're going to talk a little bit about driving tests too. And my driving test I took in my dad's station wagon. It was a Ford station, it was huge, and it was salmon pink with wood paneling. Now, if you're looking to pick up chicks,
what the hell?
That is the car. Oh,
that's worse than my mom's.
Yeah, you're gonna hear more about my dad in a moment. Susan Ad said here, not my earliest memory, but I remember my brother transporting a couple of sheep in the back of a massive green Pontiac.
Okay, I'm not judging. Was he Welsh?
No, but they were from rural New Brunswick. So
all right,
that probably explains it right there. But yeah, so my earliest car memory goes back to when I was 3 years old. It's actually one of my earliest memories, period. And it started on a Saturday night. My parents were having a party. And for some reason, I was only 3. I can't explain. I started eating cigarette butts from the ashtray. It gets better, Chris. So my parents find me eating these cigarette butts. They don't know how many I've had. Oh yeah, I was total freak as a kid. So they realized, okay, they got to take me to the hospital. So they bundle me up. Again, I'm only like 3. So we go to the hospital, and of course what they do is make you drink this stuff that makes you throw up. And it's a Saturday night, and it's getting pretty grotty in emergency. And my dad's getting, sick of waiting for me to throw up. So he asked the nurse if he can take me home. And she said, oh, fine. So puts me in the car. We drive away. We're about a block from home. And then, of course, what happens? Like, everything comes out. I just, projectile vomit. And the worst part is most of it ended up down in the heating vents.
Oh, no.
So what would happen, you didn't really notice it in the summer, but as soon as you turned the heater on, it was like horrible. So my dad, the brilliant guy that he was, waited until spring, this stretch of warm weather, and then immediately sold the car. And I still wish I could have seen the look on the guy's face that bought it the very first time he turned on that heater.
Your dad is the reason why they invented the blue book for people who bought off Auto Trader.
Yeah. I don't know if the blue book tells you much about what's in the heating vent, though.
No, I don't think there's a puke in the heating vent section there. But oh man, that's terrible.
Yeah. So why don't we get to our first group of ads? These are ads from a couple of cars that I'm very familiar with because I had them when I was younger. One was the AMC Concorde, which we called the Cluncord because nothing worked on it. And
it looked cool though. I love the look of the car.
You're gonna see it. And then we look at the Dodge Omni, which I had for years and just drove the heck out of that thing. And what's interesting about the Dodge Omni ads you're gonna see 3 of them. And you can tell they're not sure what to do with it. Like at the beginning, it's kind of like an all-purpose car. And then the next commercial a couple of years later, it's all about, it's great on gas. And then inexplicably in 1984, they soup up the engine and suddenly it's a sports car.
There was a whole lot of indecision. But that's why the Omni stuck around for so long. Because they're like, okay, what else are we going to do with this thing?
Exactly. So we're going to riff those commercials now. And just so you know, some of the audio is a little bit off on them. So it may not be pristine, but you're still going to like them because they're pretty entertaining.
And just so you know, I'm switching to a different camera angle for this just so we can make it look a little more variety-like.
Yeah, here we go. It's a hoedown.
I can't believe he didn't open up by going, howdy, partner.
Like those guys twanging away in the background. Twang, twang, twang.
I couldn't get any more for my money.
Car is by the pool.
Who puts a car by the pool? How ostentatious do you have to be to put a car by the pool and have orange seats?
Hey, CJ, come on and party.
You can't get a much prettier car than the
CJ.
GMC
His name
Concord
is
DL.
CJ. Really, I hate him now.
So save your money for the important.
Save your money on hideous cowboy shirts and voiceovers.
Some people prefer big cars for luxury, while others prefer small cars.
Well, that must be annoying for the gas station attendant.
I just love the fact that they use that special effect. I think that's pretty advanced for 1980.
That was.
Of any American compact.
Okay, he's got to get a sale here. Nope.
Just directions.
And Concord is
Nope, and they're lost.
They got to be pretty popular. What is that, a time bomb on the seat and a digital clock?
I love the fact that it was independent reclining seats as opposed to the full bench that everybody goes back.
Whoa.
We'd like to introduce the 1981.
Can you imagine your
American
passenger
Motors
drops you
Concord.
back, driver goes back.
anymore, mister. You're right, but Concord's more than
Mister,
just good looking.
apparently everybody in
This
America
luxury
talks
compact's
with a
made of the
southern
same stuff
accent.
you are.
Ah, it's
Steel,
made out of squirrel
galvanized
meat.
Steel. Concord's the only American car with
Stereotype
galvanized steel
much?
in 100% of the exterior body panels.
But is it tough on gas?
Is it tough on
Chevy
communism?
Citation.
Mister, you might be
Is
onto
it tough on my cowboy hat? Because I do wear stats.
Okay, now we're on to the Dodge Omni.
Oh my goodness. I don't know how to tell you this, but I remember this commercial.
Well, the Omni was an awesome little car.
Dodge Omni.
Omnis were everywhere. The very first car I wanted to buy was a Dodge Omni.
You know you've got a pathetic town when it's at the head of your parade, though.
Yeah, you know you're a pathetic teenager when you want to buy a Dodge Omni. That's your dream car. That was me.
America's not going to be pushed around anymore.
And neither is Nordberg.
Historic breakthrough, the new Omni Miser with the highest highway mileage.
Really, you're not going to be with a name like Miser. You're going to get pushed around.
Gasoline mileage than Toyota Corona, more than Honda Accord.
Yeah, so you know every young person was going, oh, you're calling it a miser now. Great. I'll pick up some chicks.
Only $52.99.
What I just got from that last section was that the Corolla and the Civic have also been around forever.
81 cars
That's true, they have.
to $1,000 direct.
Okay, so it was big on gas mileage, and then suddenly in 1984,
And a good old buddy. A nice little guy. Loyal, efficient. Well, we got this
He makes it sound like it's a negative to be loyal and efficient.
We gave it a sleek new coat of...
I like how he's saying, we got a sneaky idea. It's like, do you really want your car company to have a sneaky idea?
15-inch alloy
No, you don't want
wheels
anything that you invest in to have a sneaky idea.
beefed up the suspension quite a bit.
Quite a bit. We won't tell you how much, just a bit.
Why would you need souped-up suspension at all in an Omni? You're not going off-roading with an Omni.
Oh, I'll tell you a story about that later, Chris.
Oh, no.
Didn't come up with one of the fastest production cars in America.
Hey, oil futures are cheap. Let's just keep burning gas.
It's the Reagan era. Let's go. Hit the road.
No more Mr. Nice Guy.
Reaganomics equals the Omni. Souped up. That was great.
And Chris, you mentioned who needs really good suspension in a Dodge Omni?
Yeah, what was your story about that?
Yeah, so, and my friend Rob, who's on here, will back me up on this because he was there. So, to put some context into this story, I grew up north of the city. I grew up north of Toronto and in a suburb that was on the edge of a rural area. And in this rural area was mostly, at the time, biker gangs and
What the
biker
hell?
gangs,
Where was this?
mafia, and there was also a satanic church. So, of course, what we would do on the weekends is just, at night, just go driving around the country without sort of thinking about it. And on this particular night, we were on this really rough gravel road, and suddenly I notice off to the side this nice paved road. So I start going down the paved road, and it's really late. And suddenly I realize that it's a driveway, and I can suddenly see this huge house, and everything's dark. And suddenly there's a dog barking, and a light comes on. But at this time, I'm turned around, and I'm going out the driveway, and I get back to the gravel road, and I stop. I think I'm going to put a different cassette in the cassette player or whatever. And my friend Rob's beside me, and he looks behind him, and I immediately look behind us too, because I can see he's startled, and there's this guy charging. All we can see is a silhouette because it's a moonlit night. I'm not sure whether it was a shotgun or a rifle, but he's carrying this long gun. He's not saying a word, and he's making a beeline to the car. This guy didn't want to scare us. He wanted to catch us. So I immediately floor this little Omni, and of course it's a really bad road, and we're going boom, 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 and I'm expecting the suspension to just, give way, and suddenly, I'll be at the mercy of this guy with this gun. And of course I'm like just braced for the shot coming through the back, which never actually happened, but we actually did escape in the Omni, and we needed that suspension. So there you go.
All right, Omni had suspension. You didn't have any common sense.
No,
but
of
the
course
Omni
not.
had suspension. I'm getting Rockford Files vibes. Yeah, no kidding. So am I, Krista.
Yeah, I didn't have to make a handbrake turn, but yeah, there was some crazy stuff going on back in those days.
So wait a minute. This was Toronto.
This is north of Toronto, yes.
Okay. Do you care to mention the name of the town?
I would
that's north of
rather
Toronto?
not. It's actually become rather a respectable area, so I will not mention the place, but Rob has
what are you
confirmed
gonna
this
say,
is a true
Unionville?
story. A little west of there, but
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Robert, true story.
So for those of you just joining us, we want to get your comments, and some questions we've already asked was, what cars did you ride in the 1980s, whether it was yours or maybe your parents or your friends, and also, wondering about, some of your earliest car memories. Maybe, you were a kid and you remember going to the drive-in or doing something special with your folks, or just, really relaxing in those. Because you remember, Chris, they had the bench seats, right? So you could like spread out in the back, and there was plenty of room.
I remember, again, my dad just owned station wagons upon station wagons. And I think it was Ford would have the station wagon with the reverse-facing seat. So you're sitting on the seat, and you're looking out the back of the car. Mm-hmm. And I'll never understand that, because all it ever did was give me motion sickness to see the world driving away from me. But it was like some sort of torture. And you remember they binned it when people would go over bumps and kids would get ejected out the back of the car, because there were no seat belts in the very backs of those cars either. But the seats were made of pleather. There was no such thing as leather back then. But
not for those cars, anyways.
Yeah, not those cars. The cloth seats, if you didn't want it, but you wanted something that was kind of slick, you'd go with pleather. And that just, like those earliest memories I have, summertime, sitting on that. If you sit on real leather in the summer, it's not gonna tear away skin. You sit on pleather in the middle of the summer, and you're not getting up from that seat. You're taking parts of that seat with you as it melts into your backside.
You learn pretty quickly not to wear shorts unless you had a towel or something to put down.
Yes, and you would have your parents would be, all right, you know what? Put wet towels down on it. Put wet towels down on the seat. The seat will survive, but I don't want to have to take you to the hospital for a skin graft.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to change gears a little bit here, and we're going to
I see what you did there with the changing gears. Ha ha!
And we're going to talk a little bit about the act of buying cars at a car dealership. And one of the wonderful things about the 80s was it was still a time when television was king. And for a lot of these car dealers, the more crazy and obnoxious that they could be, the better it seemed to sell cars. Do you remember that, Chris?
I
Those
do.
crazy
I don't remember it being necessary. I just know that it was what it was. And of course, growing up in a border around an American border, which a lot of us in Canada do, you see a lot of the American commercials coming across, and they were absolutely atrociously obnoxious. And the funny thing is, I don't know what they still do it today. Not to the extent that we're going to show you right here, but there are still the cheesiest examples of cheesy sales cinema in today that are still on the air. We're down where we are, in this GTA area. There's a whole lot of Western New York that comes across, and oh my goodness, the clients that voice their own ads are still as brutal today as they've always been.
Yes, of course, there was method behind their madness, as we see.
Well, there was method. I got you. Sorry.
Yes, there was method behind their madness, as you will see. We're going to start with a look at Cal Worthington, who was a famous sales guy in Long Beach, California. Wow, these are the dreams that you have when you've overdone it on KFC and bourbon.
This does, I laugh, but this does remind me of a really bad trip I had on peyote once.
What is he?
What is going on? What's going on with the animals in the zoo? This makes no sense.
Even the apes getting bored.
When they were storyboarding this, at one point did they think, hey, you know what we should do? We should show cars.
We need to get the ape standing on one foot.
This must have been around the time that BJ and the Bear was a big thing on television.
Probably.
It was the monkey era. Everybody, you
Every
didn't
which
have a
way
show
but
without a
loose.
monkey on the show.
An 82 Ford Escort, only 19.
Wow,
my
those
gosh,
signs hurt your eyes.
Here's an 81 Buick Skylark, only
Okay, you know what?
just 83
This is
a month.
why
An
clients
84 Ford,
should
EXP,
never
just 20,
appear in their own ads.
Just 89 a month. Here's a 1980 Plymouth Arrow.
Se
with a
habla
camper on
español.
it.
Oh man, that
24.95,
looks
just
horrible, that
$83
San Diego
a month.
Padre
What
camper.
for a
Oh.
used car, used truck, you
Who
want to borrow
buys
prices
that?
all over.
Oh,
It's
they're showing it a
Worthington
second
Suzuki
time.
of Worthington Dodge on Beach Boulevard in Huntington Beach.
$2,595 for that.
Worthington and his dog Spot. Never worry.
Now we got a bird with spots stuck on it.
He stuck spots on a beautiful bird. Where are the animal rights activists in all this?
Well, Chillin, I'm getting ready to show you some cars and trucks that are flat worth the money. I'd like to see the cotton picker that's got
The
better
cotton
cars
picker,
below.
yeah, I really like Gone with the Wind.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Here's a
There were no
1982
laws.
Dodge Van, 64,
There was no
95, drive
taste.
it 10 days and try it out. Here's a 1983
Oh my
Ranger
gosh,
pickup,
I'd like-
a Ford
I'd like
Ranger,
to see the
59.95,
cotton picker.
drive it 10 days.
Really?
Here's a 1980
You
Ford
thought
Mustang,
that was what you wanted to
22.95.
say, huh?
Here's a 79 Ford, a 3/4 ton.
Well, you
pickup,
got these box
29.95.
cars, you got to
Here's a
sell them somehow.
1980 Ford Thunderbird,
The only thing that was good
39.95.
about these cars
Here's a
were the
1981
engines.
Ford
Nothing
Fairmont
else was
Station
appealing.
Wagon, 42.95. Got a jillion up. Bargain prices. You
He's
bet
got
your
a
life.
jillion
World
of 'em.
famous, you bet your life. Worthington Ford,
Bargain
where
prices.
2850
Listen to
Bell
me
Plaza
and my
Boulevard,
hat.
Long Beach, open to midnight. Thank you. See you here.
Hi. This is
Hi.
your big-hearted Chevrolet dealer in
Wow,
Burien.
this is just,
Here's your
this is
chance
really
to
bad.
improve your
Why
life
anybody
and
would think that
always
that
have
would be
money
a
when
great
you
idea
keep your
for a
dollar.
commercial
Just come
is
to
beyond me.
Glen
This is
Chevrolet
just
and
awful.
test drive any new
Yeah,
used
this
car,
is,
and we will get each person in
pathos
your party
taken to the
a
worst
lucky
degree.
silver dollar. Nothing to buy, just
I'm sure they got lots of
test drive any
homeless people,
car.
though. Give
So
me my
pick up your
dollar.
phone and call right
Yeah, but
now
I don't know
and
that you
get
can
your
use that
lucky
dollar
silver
anywhere.
dollar today.
It's
That's
fake. It's like
Glen
going. It's like a
Chevrolet in
Chuck E.
Burien.
Cheese coin.
This is Low Profit
Oh,
Glenn
goodness
from Glen
gracious.
Chevrolet, and I'm here to shield
He's got guns.
high prices.
Oh yeah, the animal rights activists must have loved these guys.
He
Hi,
shot
I'm
turkeys
Dick
out of the
Balls, and
sky.
you can't trust
Oh,
your
what is
car
going on with
dealer.
this clown?
Who
This
can
Dick
you trust?
Bulge.
That's showbiz. Ta-ta!
Yeah, I want to buy a car from this guy.
The idea you had in your ad was to get a crazy man that looks like he's seriously strung out on acid to take a sledgehammer to the side of one of your vehicles. Who
And
thought that was a good idea?
Anything to get attention, Chris, just like social media.
Clickbait, that is.
There we go.
That last guy looks seriously disturbed. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of that, of the joke. It reminded me of the movie The Joker. Like he was really, really twisted and bent. When they were casting him, went, we should get him to do it.
Yeah, we need to act like those crazy car salesmen back in the 80s.
That I'm stymied. I still don't understand the reasoning behind having somebody scream, laugh, act like he is strung out on something illegal. By the way, I never did peyote. I just said that for the joke. I don't even know what it is. I just heard it once in the movie The Doors. But that guy looks like he was strung out and in desperate need of counseling, not a sledgehammer in a commercial.
Yeah, and my favorite sales guy, a guy by the name of Dave Campo, is going to be coming up later. And if you think these guys are insane, this guy like takes it to the next level. We got some more comments here, Chris. And
Oh yeah, what do we got?
Rob.
Whoa.
Not my story, but I remember going out with a friend to buy a new car in Woodbridge, and the first salesman aggressively demanded
what
that we
the
give him
hell?
$5,000 cash before he'd show us any cars.
All right. Was it Woodbridge that you had that experience
there's another part here too, and he said the second salesman swore constantly and repeatedly let us know that he was Guido Camiso's son. And for those of you who don't
I don't even know who that is, but it
Canadian
doesn't-
organized crime, back in the day, Guido Camiso was part of the Camiso crime family.
I thought Camiso's was a grocery store.
It is. It's also a bakery. There's different parts of the family. Some were more legitimate than others back in the 80s, apparently, but I'm sure they're all nice people.
I can't believe you know this whole story.
I know a lot of things, Chris. I was in news for a long time.
Oh my gosh. I love those stories though. Give me $5,000 and then I'll show you a car. Oh man.
But will you break the mirror off with a big sledgehammer and a clown suit?
Yeah, but
That's
you
the
know what?
question we should have
Guido
asked.
Camiso's son is like, do I look like I'm crazy?
Oh, boy.
God.
So I'm actually curious, thank
Yeah.
you, Rob. How many of you also have dealer memories?
I got one.
Favorite car
We
buying
want to
memory.
hear
Okay.
yours, so please send us your memories from dealerships.
So go, Chris. You said you got one yourself?
Oh, yep. Sorry, my IFB keeps falling out.
Oh, sure.
My very first dealership memory. I was a little kid, really little kid. I think it was 77, 78, something like that. So my dad took. My dad was like Uncle Buck. My mom would be like, "You're in charge of the kids today," and my dad would be like, "Okay, we're going over to." So we went to the used car. I think it was Burlington Toyota. Burlington Toyota. I'm almost positive it was Burlington Toyota. Anyway, the only reason we even went there, my dad didn't even he didn't even need to buy a car. He went there because CKOC was on location doing a live remote, and performing live was Rockin' Ronnie Hawkins. You remember him?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
The Hawk,
Rockin'
he was
Ronnie Hawkins,
popular.
it was him and a DJ from the station was running his sound, and he was just playing acoustic guitar with his cowboy hat and his, and his look. And that was when he was still kind of in his prime, to tell you the truth. And my dad only wanted to go down there because he was a huge fan of Rockin' Ronnie Hawkins, wanted to meet Ronnie Hawkins. He got to do that, and we all got treated with complimentary popcorn for about an hour until we left. And that was it. That was the only reason we went.
I've said this before. I think I said this during our last live, Chris. I love your dad. Your dad and my dad would have got along really, really well.
No, your dad chain smoking in the front seat of a car to drive in beside my dad who's drinking rye,
Yep.
driving to and from the drive-in. They would have been buds.
Oh, yeah. And since we're talking about my dad, I was going to save this story for later, but I might as well bring it in now.
Sure.
So my dad was a working class guy. He was he'd been a car mechanic, and he was a welder and a skilled tradesman. So there was this kind of working class thing back in the 70s and early 80s where it was always, working with other guys to, kind of scam money or save money or whatever. Right. So what my dad used to do, like with my Dodge Omni, if I needed new tires, he would go down to Canadian Tire. He knew the mechanics there, and they would be obviously taking tires off of other people's cars once they got bald. And rather than recycling them, what they would do is sell them on the sly. So I would always get these, kind of half bald tires as my quote unquote new tires that my dad would, slip the guy $20 or whatever. But so I start with bald tires. So obviously I'm driving and I'm driving. This is the wintertime too. I'm driving. So steel belted radios literally have these steel things that are together, these steel belts.
Yeah.
So after a while, you could actually see the steel of the steel belts because the rubber would, go down. And then at a certain point, the tire would split. And it's usually when I was on the highway and suddenly there's like this loud noise and I'm looking in my rear view mirror and my tire's in half. There's two halves of my tire just, flying backwards down the road. And that's when I knew I'd have to put the spare on.
You have got the scariest goddamn stories I have ever heard. The stories you told me from back when we did our last live for Drive-In, and the stories you're telling me now, I cannot believe that we're actually doing a 2-box broadcast, that you're actually still here. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And as my friend Rob says, my dad was a sweet, sweet man, but he was a character. He certainly was. And, I survived things, and now I have all these stories.
Tires split. You're like, oh, I'm gonna need to put the spare on.
Yeah, I remember one time, this is back when the Ministry of Transportation still had these little rescue trucks. And I remember the guy with the rescue truck showing up, and all he can see are these like little pieces of rubber around my my wheel rim. And he just like shook it. He didn't even say anything to me. He just shook his head and he goes, "Get in the car, kid. We'll take you to the take you to the garage."
I love these stories. Oh man, the Jason Reid Chronicles.
Yeah, exactly.
I would
And-
subscribe to that.
And Krista has sent us a message saying the K car was the 80s car. And I actually have to do a shout out to Krista because after we did the last live, which is on being at the drive-in, we were trying to come up with ideas of, okay, what do we do with our next live? And she actually came up with the idea of doing one on cars. So thank you for that.
Oh, this is Krista's idea.
Yes, it is.
Well,
And
thank you, Krista.
yeah. And as she said, like the K car was definitely the car of the 80s. It was Chrysler's comeback. It was
I would
incredibly
have to say
popular.
that is 100%. That's very accurate.
And interestingly enough, next on the agenda, okay, sorry, those are Rockford Files things. So next on the agenda is actually a sales film for the K car. Right when they first came out, they produced this 3-minute 15 sales film. Didn't even have any voiceover to it. It was just sort of a visual story and a song. And why don't we go and look at that right now and be prepared for a long song.
Well, all right, here we go. What are we going to be watching here now? Boy on a bicycle. And why am I talking like this? These commercials are getting to me.
And why don't I remember a milk lady from back in the 80s?
I think it's because we grew up in Canada and we had bagged milk, which, again, also didn't make any sense.
Look at that hair. That's a pathetic town.
Look
the
at that
K cars
headline.
arriving today is the big news.
It's like the Omni being in the parade. None of this makes sense.
So that woman's living in that big mansion, and as you'll see later, she's going to take the bus to go buy the car.
I don't like how this commercial is setting up. They're playing too much on the steam rolling truck and the innocent boy on the bike.
Yeah. It's kind of frightening.
I'm a little anxious now.
I am too.
This is nail biting.
The way they're editing this. Uh-oh. Here we go. They're going to come together.
Oh, see?
Watch out, kid. Oh, thank goodness. Of course there's a cop when you need one. Hold on a sec. Isn't that Cal from the dealership? So now she's in a different apartment, and now she's taking a bus. She did live in a mansion.
I'd like to know. There's a Volvo. That's confusing. They're just throwing in random shots now. Car, woman, truck, bike is still there. At what point are we going to actually be told what this commercial is supposed to be selling? This song just continues.
I'm just going to buy this video game.
I don't need soft contemporary pop to tell me the lyrics of why I should buy a car. This isn't a musical.
There's a lot of brown, though. If the brown doesn't make you want to buy Chris, I don't know what does.
I'm not buying a car that's the same color as a poop emoji, that's for sure.
This family's getting out of town. Too much music for us.
Detailed in the lyrics. She's and rockin' pinion steering. It's like, what are you doing?
They only listen to country. American Hero? Carpool? That's obviously a car lake.
They're picking up the car at the carpool right beside Car Lake.
Nice way to spray the construction worker there as you're driving by.
That's what I was going to say. Those construction workers on the side are like, hey, buddy.
Okay, so she's putting a present in her car, dressed in a pink pantsuit.
Pantsuit, short hair.
Short hair. Griswolds are going to Wally World. Oh, there she is. Or is she? Totally different hair. Totally different
Continuity
clothing.
issues.
Her mother doesn't know the difference. So once again, we have a character morph into somebody else by the end of the commercial.
Yeah, that reminds us of the ceiling fan ad where people were
That's
morphing
right.
all over the place. That song was so incredibly irritating. The fact that they thought that it would be a great idea to try and sell a product by playing a song. Like, again, if you're listening to a song, you're going to have to listen to it 3 or 4 times to know what the lyrics are. So I can't imagine that ad was successful in any way, shape, or form. It could not have been.
Yeah, I wonder if it was actually played at auto shows, which actually leads to another interesting story.
Oh, here we go.
And oddly enough, this again involves my friend Rob and I. So when I was in journalism school, we had our own school newspaper, and we would sometimes get invited to media events. So this one year, I think it was like 1990 or 91, suddenly this press kit appeared with an invitation to do the media event at the auto show in Toronto, which is a big deal. And back then they still had, it was still totally wet, like in that they didn't sell liquor, they gave it away, and it was everywhere. So of course, being a teenager, I bring my friend as my camera person. He doesn't have a camera, but nobody asks. So we go in, and the first place we go is this auditorium where they have this, it's basically an award show, and Jackie Stewart is there. Remember Jackie Stewart? He used to be the race car guy? Yeah, so we very quickly, unfortunately, have a few pops, and I get a little rowdy, and I start imitating Jackie Stewart to his face. Hey, it's a great day to be giving out awards. Hey, it's just great, Toronto, and now you're giving awards to people, and then somehow I ended up with the engineers at Honda, partying with them, and it was kind of a crazy day. But back in the day, the auto shows were really something else. They spent a lot of money to impress the journalists and even the journalism students, and plied them as much as possible.
Now, did they know that you were journalism students, or did you go in with cred that made it look like you were actual journalists?
Well, the interesting thing was we had pre-registered. They had sent a registration form to us at the university, and things were a little more lax back then. Like, people generally didn't crash stuff like that, so they just assumed if you had gotten a hold of a press kit that you were legit.
Media. There you go.
And we
Good
certainly,
for you.
We certainly weren't the only journalists who were imbibing either. So it wasn't just us.
Oh, I don't doubt that for a second, of course.
So yeah,
you're not who they were concerned about.
Probably not. No. Yes, it was definitely a reign of terror for a while, but somehow we survived. We actually didn't get kicked out. So
yeah, the auto show has changed a lot. I remember when the auto show used to split between the convention center and the Rogers Center, which was really interesting. You would go, you'd walk across the skywalk when there was a skywalk that connected the two of them. Now it's just cut off because of the Ripley's and stuff like that. But I remember when that happened, and now it's, what is it? I think it's all in the Metro Toronto Convention Center, but it's on every single level, and both the north. Of course, back then they didn't have the south wing of the convention center. They only had the north wing. There was only one wing. It was just the convention
It was much
center.
Smaller than it is today. But yeah, obviously the automotive industry is huge business.
Yeah, there's a lot more import now too. It's like back in the auto show, I also don't remember there being a section like a whole section dedicated to Maserati, and then a whole section dedicated to Alfa Romeo. Now you've got every single major car company available everywhere now.
Well, I remember at one point having a spirited conversation with an engineer from Volkswagen, which is really funny because I know nothing about cars. But apparently after I had a couple drinks in me, I was, debating about how much horsepower was in a certain car or something like that. So
that would have been hilarious.
It was.
A student, pickled, no clue, but talking like he did.
There's something about the confidence that you have when you're young, especially when you might have a drink or two in you.
It's called liquid courage.
Yeah. So talking about selling cars, let's get to our next group of car dealer ads.
Yeah.
And if you thought the last bunch were insane, these guys are really funny. And it's interesting because I put these two dealers together because they're kind of the opposite. First, we have Chuck Miller, who is strange, but he's kind of quiet. And then we go to a guy by the name of Chris Campo, who, as you'll see, is absolutely crazy, crazy with energy. And I think he's probably my favorite car salesman now.
I think people are going to love this
pretty
one.
insane. So yeah, so let's have a look here. Okay, number 7, and we'll roll that video.
I'm stuck with used cars and a headache too. I've really got a headache. We
Oh my gosh, what the hell is going on here?
And we have 3
This is the funniest episode of Hee Haw I've ever seen.
Sales are down in the
garish
winter, but I
version of
must
Hee
do
Haw
them
I've
now.
ever
So
seen.
bring me a bottle of aspirin for
what
my
the?
headache, and I'll give you an extra $200 rebate on any used car priced over $9.95. So
This
head
guy's
for the
looking to
hills.
peddle
Go to
drugs.
the hills,
Bring
that
me
is,
aspirin and
come
I'll
see
give you
me.
money
Miller.
off.
That's
Come
me,
on.
C. Miller Chevrolet, 28
Who writes this
Bishop Road.
stuff?
Charlie
Blew
Miller
a
here from
kiss.
C. Miller Chevrolet.
Oh my God, this is like a horror movie.
I buy a year-old 78 Chevrolet when I can sell you a
This looks like the scenes that was deleted from
Miller here for C. Miller
1984.
Chevrolet. I'm sitting on top of the world because the sales figures show that I'm #1 in the greater Cleveland area. In 1979,
Best special
I sold
effects
more
the
retail
80s could buy.
Chevrolets than any other dealer.
This
That's
is
right. In
terrible.
1979, C. Miller
This
Chevrolet
is
was
so
#1
bad.
again.
You get to see his
And I'll be
crotch and
#1
then,
in
listen to
1980
really
because I'll
bad
put you in a new
traffic
Chevrolet
because that's
for
what you
less.
want to hear
Come
when
see
you're
Miller.
thinking of
That's
buying a
me at
car.
2810 Bishop Road and see
You're
the
watching
USA
an
at a
old
C. Miller
man's crotch
Chevrolet.
come towards you.
That's right,
Terrible.
friends. A giant used car sale is going on right now, right here at the giant Viking Chevrolet.
If a
Plymouth.
brain
Look at this.
hemorrhage was a sales guy,
1979
this would be it.
automatic power steering. Finance it today. $49 down, $89 a month, or $1,988. Hey, Mel, bring the Cavalier in here. Yeah. Here it is, friends. 1983 Chevy Cavalier with a 4-speed transmission. $4,988.
What the Sam hell is going
And
on
let's
here?
call that hotline today. 786.
you'd think he'd have a more modern phone.
Friends, it's our second annual van conversion
Oh, here he
show.
is again.
And it's
This- I
going
can't get enough of this
now
guy. This
at
guy's
Wow
awesome.
Dodge and Waukesha for 3 days only. This Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 5
His
nationally
cadence
owned
is
van
practically
conversion
music.
companies. Over 60 van conversions on display, all with bank financing, all discounted to save you hundreds of dollars.
I'd much
If I
rather
put
watch
you in a
this than
brand
listen
new
to that
1985
silly song that we were
Dodge
listening
GMC
to.
van conversion,
This guy is the highly
Cruise Control,
caffeinated
and
Herb
much
Tarlick.
more. Look at this
Oh
thing,
my gosh.
$259 a month. How about this price? $12,998. We'll see you here.
Here.
We're
Oh,
very
come
high
on.
prices. Where? Right here.
Hey, here.
That's right, friends. We're Dick Stevens Chevrolet in Wheaton. Now look at this car. Here's brand new.
at this car.
1984 Chevrolet Chevette. Oh, look at this price. $5,488. So what do? Let's pick up the phone. And
You know,
let's
he has
call
wallpaper
that
at
hotline
home that
today.
matches that tie.
2400. We're Dick Stevens
Probably
Chevrolet.
does. He
We
probably
will
has
see
a
ya
giant
here.
bathtub full of cocaine, too. You left the cocaine line in. I was kind of hoping you would get that one out. I was going Scarface with that, by the way. He was wired. He was freaking wired. Right here. I love it. But my favorite was the end with the Chevette. Take a look at the prize. He was bonkers.
And, one of the things I love about that was there was this episode of WKRP where there was this guy who sold stereos. His name was Dell.
Oh, yeah,
Stereo in
Dell,
town.
yeah.
And he had the exact same cadence. And I'm sure that actor based his performance on this guy, Chris Campo, who was actually hugely famous throughout the 80s. He was even on David Letterman, Chris.
Okay, what was he on Letterman for?
For being known as this crazy car salesman, because what he would do, he was part of an advertising agency. So
Okay.
if a car dealership was having issues or wanted to sell more, they would contact the agency and have this guy do a bunch of commercials for them. So he did commercials for car dealerships all over the US. So everybody knew him. Everybody assumed he was the local car dealer guy. So they would go to see this insane madman. And sometimes they'd be disappointed because usually he wasn't there, but they would often come away with a car. And it's weird because obnoxious as it is, and there's been a lot written on this guy. I was reading today, one of the dealers said, when we hired Dick, everybody started to complain about how obnoxious the ads were, but we literally sold twice as many cars because of his
Oh my
ads.
gosh.
Twice
That
as
is
many.
massive improvement. If you double your revenue by one guy, how wealthy was this guy?
I think he was actually really wealthy. He lived in Reno. He passed away in 2011. But it's interesting because you look at these ads and he's in Waukesha, which is Wisconsin, Wheaton, which is a suburb of Washington. And these aren't necessarily huge wealthy places either. So he would go in to places where the stock wasn't moving, and man, he would move that stock.
Was he actually, answer me this though, was he actually at those locations or was he green screened in?
I think most of it was green screen, but it sounded like he did a lot of traveling at one point. So I think there were some dealerships that would actually bring him in, but it looks like most of the stuff was done with green screen. So they would probably send him some video or some stills, and he would just be in front of a green screen all day, just, going
right,
boom, 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 just churning these things out.
Well, Susan is right. There is a reason why the used car salesman has been hammered in movies and in television comedies because of these commercials. These commercials are why they have a bad rap.
Yes. And again, for any of you who have any car buying memories, please share them with us. We would like that. Chris, I'm just going to put you on here for a second while I clear my own throat.
Okay. I have a buying a car memory. Jason and I were talking about this earlier. You're gonna love this. So I was living in Vancouver for a bit, and it was my very first car I'd ever purchased. Okay. To this point, I had driven and crashed all my mom's and dad's cars because I was kind of crappy, but they were always automatic. So it was my very first car, and I bought it from Port Coquitlam Chrysler back in 1991. His first car I ever bought. So here I am, 21-year-old, and I'm living away from home, and I'm 3 provinces. I don't know, I'm like 4 or 5 provinces and three time zones away. And back then there was a big difference in price between the automatic transmission and the standard transmission. It was like back in the day when there would be smoking or non-smoking. Well, now you have to look for a standard, or it comes in a high performance car. But back then you could get either or. I could only afford a standard. I had no idea how to drive a standard, but that didn't matter because I could only afford a standard. So I bought a standard. I went with a friend of mine who test drove it for me. He sat in the driver's seat. I was in the passenger seat, and the sales guy was in the back. Sales guy's bewildered. Why are you not driving the car you're going to buy? It wasn't until we went back in to work out the deal that I told him, look, I can't even drive stick. I'm going to learn. He's going to teach me how to drive it. My buddy drove the car back for me, and it sat there while I learned how to drive stick, and then eventually worked my way into driving that car as my first car for a number of years. But let's remember something. I learned how to drive stick for the very first time in my life on a car that I had just bought that I now had to make payments on, and it was in Vancouver, where the streets go up and the streets come down. It was not my brightest move, but it was the only move I had. I took the shot. It worked out, but I did burn a lot of clutches in the time that I owned standard cars. Yeah.
So how long did you have that car?
Had that car 5 or 6 years. So not a long time, but I burned the clutch out of that thing. Really. Oh, that car. You remember you were talking about cars that used to fall apart? Mm-hmm. That car, by the time it was done, I drove that car back and forth across the country. By the time that car was done, I'll never forget driving in Toronto or someplace, and it was just pouring rain. And the water, I noticed that my feet were wet. And it was only then that I realized that there was a hole that had developed underneath my floor mat in the steel of the car. So when I pulled it back, you could see the street underneath the car. I was like, oh my God, there's a fucking hole in my... Oops, sorry. I'm like, oh my God, there's a hole in my car. There's a hole in my car. At that point, I decided it was trade-in bait.
Yeah, as Susan just sent us a memory here. She says, I have no idea why he did this, but my dad once bought a car in Guelph, Ontario, when we were living in New Brunswick. And for those of you who don't know Canada, that's a long way away. That's half
a country away.
Yeah. So the whole family traveled to Ontario by train and then drove back. That is a memory.
That is as nutty as buying a Standard when you don't know how to drive Standard, just because it was the only thing you could afford.
Yeah, hopefully he got a really good price on that.
You know, for those of you in the United States, driving from Guelph to New Brunswick is kind of along the same lines as driving from Kansas City to New York City. It's about that same distance.
Yeah. And another question for our audience. Do you remember getting your license? Having to do that road test for a lot of people is a very strong memory, and many people have some interesting stories around that. How about you, Chris? Do you remember getting your license?
Oh, absolutely. I 100% remember. Because my son right now is 18 and is really just putting it off. I mean, COVID has an awful lot to do with it. You know, it's impossible to get in. Plus, he's trying to balance that with first-year university from home. So it's not a priority right now. And I've told him this story so many times, I've got it memorized. That was back in the day, Jason. You and I remember. You get a license, and as soon as you get your license, boom, you're allowed to drive wherever the world you want. You could drive to New Brunswick if you wanted to. I wrote the 365, got that done, no problem. That was like 90, 95%.
The 365 is your learner's permit. It was called that because it lasted for a year, 365 days.
Thanks for I keep forgetting that also is an old term that no one knows. I went for my I took all my driving classes, because that's when you could sign up for driving classes through high school, and then they would come and pick you up at your high school. So I took driving classes, did fairly well in them, had a really good time in them and stuff like that. But I just remember the day that you would go with your driving instructor, and I don't know about you, but for me, you would drive your driving instructor's car for the driving test at the MTO. And I remember him taking me on a road trip around the area to sort of scout out the route. And at one point he turned to me and he said, "Are you driving in a funeral procession?" And it was only then that I realized I was going like 25 kilometers per hour in a 40 zone, because we were in a residential area. And I was like, I'm really nervous. So I didn't pass my first try. I was coming up to a stop. It was kind of a rain snow mix that day, so there was a lot of slush, lots and lots of slush. And I had part of the thing you had to remember was roll the window down a bit, because if it's snowing, with the fogging up of the windows, did that. Slush came through the window and got me in the eye, and I let it shake me, and it was bothering me because I thought, I wonder what I should do. And I didn't go through a red light, but I didn't come to a complete stop at a red light. I just sort of went in and then made the right-hand turn. And I got knocked down enough that I didn't pass on the first try. Everything else is great. 3-point turn, parallel parking. Second time I nailed it, and then proceeded to go out and wreck my mom's car.
Oh, jeez. That's challenging. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. I failed my first time too, and it's
you did?
Yeah. What was kind of crazy is my driving instructor. No word of a lie. His name is Bert Simpson.
Are you kidding me?
So I
like right from the show.
Well, Bert instead of Bart, an E instead of an A.
Very close though.
But very, very close. So Bert was a nervous guy, as you can imagine, but he was really nice, and I was like his prize pupil. Like I took to everything, and he was like, "Okay, Jason, you're not going to have any problem." And where I took my test in Brampton, Ontario, they have this. You basically take your test on these fake streets, like these really short streets. Rather than actually take you on real streets, they take you on these fake streets. So I guess if you injure someone, it's somebody who deserves to be injured. I don't know. But so you're driving along and you can't really pick up speed because the streets are so short. And I remember getting in and my evaluator mumbled, and I'm driving and the first thing I hear is, what? Make a left turn. So of course, now he's shouting at me. So I'm like, making that left turn as hard as possible. And like everybody's looking, go, what the heck is going on with this guy? Right. So I ended up failing. And then of course I had to take it again. My parents didn't want me to because they had to pay to use the driving instructor's car. So I had to take my dad's salmon pink station wagon with the faux wood on it. But it was worse than you think, Chris, because there were a lot of things on that car that weren't exactly legal. So my dad was a little bit nervous. So for instance, the parking brake didn't work. Like it was a pedal, but you couldn't push it down. There was a problem with the brake and he didn't want to have it fixed. So he went in and snipped the brake wire for the parking brake so that the pedal would go down. Like it didn't work, but the pedal went down. It looked like it worked. So I remember, going and then doing the thing and having to put the parking brake in and the guy's looking at, oh, okay, that's fine. I'm just like, yeah, I don't have a parking brake anymore. My dad broke it, but it looks like I do. So
it's a prop. It's just
a prop. Exactly.
Oh my God. Your dad is awesome.
Yeah, again, he's certainly a character. So Robert's written us, my brother is a driving instructor. He has stories to tell about bad student drivers. Yes. I can imagine he does.
Get him on the line. I want to hear these.
Yeah. We should, if we do another driving one, we should definitely get Kevin here because I'm sure he's got some great stories for us.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Okay, so we're going to head up. Oh, we've got another comment coming here.
What do we got?
So Susan,
right.
I remember the driving classes, specifically learning to merge and pass transport trucks, and the driving instructor screaming, hit the gas, as an 18-wheeler came up behind us at 120 kilometers an hour. And that was...
see a panicked driving instructor. Hit the gas!
But that was a serious problem because I remember because you'd be timid as a driver, and especially when changing lanes, you'd want to slow down when really you need to speed up.
I remember close friend of the family's, we were driving back from a Blue Jay game, and I was driving, and we were merging. I think we turned off on the highway somewhere in Oakville or something, Ontario, not too far from Toronto, just to grab something to eat, and then we got back on the highway, and I remember this is when I was still kind of learning how to drive, and because again I was only 17 or 18, and I would do the same thing. I would merge onto the highway, but I would, as soon as I'd pull in, I would put on the brakes because I felt like I was going too fast. He's like, "What are you doing?
You're gonna get us killed. I need to be careful. Careful."
My dad's lesson was always be going 100 in the one. This kilometers per hour, by the way, America. Be going 100 kilometers per hour before you get out of the on-ramp. Otherwise, you're going to get smoked from the rear. But it would freak me out to go that fast at first, so I would always put on the brake for fear that it was going too fast. It's like, no, you do the opposite.
Exactly. So our final video today is going to be from a car that was almost as ubiquitous as the K car, wasn't it, Chris?
Oh, absolutely. I had when going through high school, I had friends that had one of two cars. They either had the K car or they had the Chevy Cavalier.
Yeah. So what we're going to look at now is actually a sales training film from the Chevy Cavalier. So let's look at how they sold it. Whoa, a title that hates your eyes.
Wow, that is something else.
The 82 Cavalier is like no other Chevrolet before it. It's the most
Wow, I like the gray and maroon color scheme, though.
From A to Z.
It's like no other car before. That's right, because it's new. It's the 82. Of course there wasn't another one like it.
Diagonal braking system. From a list of more than 40 standard features to quality fit and finish. From maneuverability to zinc-rich pre-coated metals.
Zinc.
Cavalier has it all.
Including zinc.
Cavalier as the complete car
comes with vitamins.
Is more
I like
than
that.
A heady advertising slogan. We know Cavalier has what new car buyers want.
Zinc.
Because they told us so.
They told us that we wanted zinc and a complete car, not just half a car or bits and pieces of a car. We want a complete car.
They compared
Michael
the Cavalier
Caine getting a car
with its foreign and domestic competition.
Apparently only old people drive this car.
Woman has a black belt in sales.
Datsun 310.
Yes.
And Dodge Aries. That's some stiff competition. Through extensive interviews before and after participants
real stiff competition, the Datsun and the K car.
We identified the
this guy's head comes out of his
most impressive and important.
Oh, look, it's Richard Dreyfuss from Jaws.
Hey, he's in the commercial.
In presenting the Cavalier to your prospects,
make sure to wear a very long plaid skirt.
First, The exterior
Wear very
styling,
heavy clothing
fit,
in a
and
desert.
finish.
Oh, wait, look at this.
We're on Jeopardy.
Point out Cavalier's high level of standard features by using
What
the price
are
label.
standard features?
Third, the
Nothing like a
interior
good label
roominess,
read.
comfort, luxury, and cargo room. And fourth, demonstrate
This is like a
Cavalier's
prehistoric
ride, handling,
PowerPoint presentation.
comfort, and performance.
Drive the car, number 4.
Obviously, these are the qualities you'll want to point out to each of your prospects. Now, this program will focus on how to do just that, presenting
good.
and demonstrating Cavalier as a complete car by building a structured walk-around presentation and making an effective demonstration ride. Beginning with the exterior,
I
we
guess
asked
that's the same as the
participants
test
about
drive.
Cavalier's styling, fit,
Hey, how about we
and
drive the
finish.
car? Why? Okay, whatever.
I like the styling of the Cavalier.
This man
and
knows
also the,
styling. Just check out that string tie.
That is one heck of a bolero. Oh, my Lord.
Woman's hair has her own area code.
A woman's hair is smuggling animals.
From when I first stepped into it, it was easy to get into. The door closed, nice
Easy
and
to get
solid.
into, had these newfangled doors that open and closed.
The car, it allowed me to get in the car and I could close the door, and I'm going to buy it now because the door closes and it let me in. You see.
Cavalier's excellent styling was brought up again and again during our interviews.
I do love the
It's
paint
a
job
point
on this,
you
though. I
should
got to tell
make
you, this is
immediately
actually
with
pretty slick.
prospects. Talk about the styling, the European flavor, a result of its sloping
flavor.
hood, narrow grille,
European
rectangular
flavor.
headlamps,
You know how there's
roof line,
orange juice and
rear end
there's
treatment.
orange flavoring? Well,
Mention
this
that
isn't a European
aerodynamics
car.
played
It's
a
just
major
European
role
flavor.
in Cavalier's design. Hurricane force winds of 100 miles per
What?
hour helped shape it so
Helped
that
shape
wind
it?
resistance and air turbulence
What
are
did they
reduced,
do? They
which
put
means
molten steel in
added
front of a
mileage.
hurricane and went, oh, look at Cavalier. That's great.
Show your prospect up close the excellent fit of Cavalier's sheet metal. The fender to
It doesn't
hood
have
fitch,
ragged
the door
edges that cut off your
seams and
hand.
trunk. All the result of
We use
quality
sheet metal where those
manufacturing
other
and
cars
assembly
use
processes.
Reynolds aluminum
Review
wrap.
the quality story to familiarize yourself with these points and make it a part of every sales presentation. You can also demonstrate the quality fit. Ask the prospect to close the door
With
using
their
only
face.
one
Oh.
finger and tell him to
Why?
listen to the sound. Take a coin,
Well, I'm sold.
such as a nickel, and run it along a seam.
Take a screwdriver,
to show
run it along the
Cavalier's
pane.
consistent tight tolerances.
What in the world is going on now?
Draw your prospect's
Tell your
attention to the
client
car's
to drag a
luxurious
coin
finish,
across
a
a
result
car
of
he hasn't
refined
bought yet.
processes and richer paint formulas, usually reserved for more expensive cars.
And better
Mention
people than
also
you.
that the Cavalier receives 31 anti-corrosion treatments.
31
More
treatments. Did it get some
protection
sort of
than
bad
any
car
Chevrolet
disease?
before it. And
Took
a
31
3-year
tries
GM
to get it
perforation
right,
from
apparently.
corrosion limited warranty backs it up. Throughout your walk-around, stress the quality that's so obviously built into each Cavalier.
If it's obvious, why do you have to
Another
stress it?
essential point to discuss with prospects is Cavalier's long list of standard features.
Like doors.
As a transportation counselor,
Doors that
will help
open
you sell
and
each
close and
prospect
allow
the
you
right
in
car
and out
for
of the
his or
car.
her needs.
These are standard.
Be enthused about Cavalier and take advantage of the showroom traffic it'll generate.
Yeah, don't go Cavalier.
will attract
Boring.
a wide range of buyers, some of whom will be prime prospects for other Chevrolet models. So sell
Don't
the
sell the
complete
Cavalier to
price
rich
value
people.
story of the right Chevrolet car for every prospect.
There we go,
Okay.
Chris. And you know, when we do these sort of sales training films regularly, it's Cheesy Sales Cinema. I always ask you, how well do you think that sold the car?
I would have loved to have heard a little bit more about the car. He was talking about everything he talked about was superficial. It was take a look at the quality. Point out what was the quality. I'd like to have heard some specs in it, but maybe they didn't need that. Maybe this training video was for people who already knew the tech specs behind the car. I will say, however, that I loved the Chevy Cavalier back in the day. I really did. He also at the end closes by saying, use the Cavalier to try to entice them to maybe come back one day and buy, a different car. It was bait. It's like use the Cavalier as a worm, put it on the end of a hook and put it out there and see who might come in and buy something better. So,
yeah, that was my understanding, is if they came in and it was obvious that they, could buy something better, then it was like, yeah, switch. It's a good car, but we've got ones that have a higher profit margin.
Yeah, exactly. So let's put the let's put the Cavalier in the front of the showroom to get people in because it's cheap. And then when they get in the showroom, go, well, you know what? For only $2 or $3 grand more, I can get this car.
Yeah. Well, that's classic sales, right? And Krista
Yeah, it
thinks
would
it's
be.
quite amusing that I remember my driver instructor's name.
I do not remember anything about my driving
Yeah.
instructor except that he was frustrated with. I remember he smoked the entire time. I remember once he took me driving in Hamilton, and he had to stop off. He had me park alongside the central courthouse because he had to run in to make a payment or something or pick something up and then get back in the car. I just became his lackey while he played music and smoked cigarettes all the time.
Yeah, I think if my driving instructor was named anything other than Bert Simpson, I probably would not have remembered.
True enough. Yep, I get that.
And, there was one other comment that I missed here that I want to get back to.
Sure.
Because I don't want, okay, where is it here? Oh, yes. Okay. So
What do we got?
it's this. For those of you who are reading the comments and are wondering what this story is about, I might as well finish with this. The story about
please
my
do.
dad losing the bolt in the car engine. Another great dad. This might as well have been the story of Jason's dad tonight. But of course, my dad, again, he'd been a mechanic and he fancied himself as a mechanic. And I remember I had this Ford Fairmont, pretty good car, and I
Yes.
drove it for a long time and was having trouble with the engine. And my dad was having a look at it. He took off, I think it was the air filter, and you had that screw that would
And then
come
you
off.
pull
Yeah.
the thing up. Yeah.
So
and then you'd slide that donut in.
yeah. So, he's propped that up, and then when he goes to put it back, he realizes that screw has disappeared. He can't find it. So he's looking everywhere, and he's like, son, come over. Can you look under the car? And I've got like a flashlight and everything. I'm looking under the car, and my dad's just like, I don't know. And he says, oh, I have an idea. Son, go and start the car. So I turn the key, and I hear a boom. Like this explosion. And my dad, very laconic man, just sort of saunters over to the driver's side. He goes, son, I got good and bad news about your car. Said, the bad news is you just ruined your engine, but the good news is I now know where that screw went. And about 40 minutes later, there was a tow truck taking that car off to the junkyard. Ah, my dad.
I swear to God, can we please just do a show on your dad? I'm sorry. If my camera is rocking and rolling here, it's because my knee is up against the desk that has my webcam on it, and I'm laughing so freaking hard, I'm knocking the table around. I got some good news and I got some bad news. Bad news is you ruined your engine, and we're going to have to scrap the car. Good news, and I found out where the bolt went.
Yep, that was it. So thank you, everyone, for joining us on this story of my dad spectacular tonight. We want to let you guys know we're going to do another live just before Christmas, December 17th. We're going to do some Christmas commercials, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And thank you once again for all of your memories. One of the things we love about doing this stuff live is getting that feedback and getting your memories and your comments too, because that really, makes it different from what we normally do.
You know what you could do is you can, and again, thank you for all of your comments. Let everybody know whom you know that that this is on, because what happens is they can go back and watch it and they can still leave comments, and then Jason and I will get back to them. And what we also could probably do is when we do our next live, we can recap if we've had some really good comments. We can say, hey, you know what? A couple weeks ago when we did the memories of the cars, I want to shout out to this person, this person, this person, because that story was actually really funny or something like that. So these will live on YouTube. Like the last one we did will live on Facebook. So revisit them and then visit us at our YouTube page and subscribe. That way you're alerted every time we do this or our regular Thursday issues. The other thing is you have access at that point all the time at our past episodes. You can go back in the archives and cherry pick which one you think you might like.
And also for future episodes, let us know the sort of things that you would like to see. Like, for instance, Krista was the one who suggested we do this thing on cars. So if you have an idea of a particular old video or a group of commercials or a theme, we would love to hear about it. And especially for these live ones, sometimes it's nice to do a theme and show a whole bunch of videos instead of just one.
That's exactly right. So you can be just as big a part of the show as we are. All you have to do is leave the comments, right? Especially, well, we're here at home. We're here. Home is YouTube, so you can leave it right here, either where you're watching us now, or go to the website or our YouTube channel, and you can leave comments there as well. Comments or suggestions. How about that?
Indeed, yeah, we love both of them. So on behalf of Chris May, I'm Jason Reid. Thank you guys once again for watching, and we will see you
right here. Cheezy Sells Cinema.
Next time. Here.